Welcome to the True North podcast. I'm leaving that all of that in. What was I saying? Oh, we're off to a great start. We're two practicing light workers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can follow your true north back to your true self. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby.
And today we are going to talk about confidence. As I said last time, unless you have anything else more interesting to talk about.
No, I think that's it. We need to. I think it's a great jumping in point.
Yes.
It's interestingly enough that topic has come up 3 times for me outside of this conversation. So.
What?
Yes.
I had another 3 thing that happened. Did that tell you? The Smashing Pumpkins?
Yes, which is so incredibly weird.
And a very oddly specific thing. Like you mentioned it on the podcast, and then it came on radio that was playing in the background. And then there was a third thing. I think I sent you the
quote.
third thing.
Yeah,
a quote.
like somebody quoted
their
lyrics.
It was a mailer. It was a mailer, a mailing list that I get, that I'm on. And everyone starts with a quote, and it hit my inbox and had the lyrics from Smashing Pumpkins. And I was like, what the fuck? I've never, ever listened to the Smashing Pumpkins. I've just been kind of like aware of them as a thing.
Well, that's just it. Like, you know, when people think that manifesting doesn't work, this is just like proof. When you put energy on something and you talk about it, this is what happens. You know, opportunities present themselves. The universe lines up. So just start manifesting things other than smashing pumpkins.
And that's like people will use the reticular activating system in the brain to discount that and just say, like, oh, your brain it becomes aware of it and then gets attuned to it, right? Like I had a buddy who just needed a new car and started looking at a new car manufacturer he had never paid attention to before, and then while he was looking at it and when he was shopping, he started seeing them all over the place. And he'd argue that like, oh, you were always seeing those things, they just never registered. But that's kind of the point. Like that's not a argument against it. It's actually kind of an argument for it, because what you're doing is you're resetting the information that you take in to create your experience.
Exactly.
It's always been there. It's always there. And
right.
that's kind of what gratitude is too, right?
Always thrown out. It's just whether or not you're paying attention to grab them.
Right. I may not have even seen Smashing Pumpkins more frequently pop up on my radar. It's just that something inside tuned me into it to start noticing it, because we both have this kind of like rule of 3s, and then now there's significance there. And that is a tool that the universe can use to communicate with you, if that's how you're wired. But it doesn't mean, I don't know.
Which is interesting, because, I think the universe is adapted to me. They're like, okay, well, you need to see things in 3s, so here we go. Like, you'll believe it if it's in 3s.
That's what got me into tarot as a Christian.
Okay.
Because it was something that we were very opposed to, and it was part of this divination thing that was of the devil.
Right.
And then I kind of had that little experiment where I was like, okay, well, I started learning that I think it's more about the reader and less about the cards. And as a little Christian, I would sit there and sometimes I would pray and I'd be like, okay, God, I need an answer to this question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my eyes, open my Bible, put my finger down, whatever verse I land on, that's my answer. I'm just going to trust it comes from you. Well, that's fucking divination.
That's like an oracle. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's legit what you're doing with an oracle deck. All it is you're inviting the divine in to communicate with you in a very specific, agreed upon setting, such that it can be easily translated in some kind of way that you've made predictable. And the thing that really sold me on it was this experiment where I took a 52-card poker deck and was like, this is my oracle deck. And I assigned meaning to all of them. I started doing readings, and they were just as legit as the tarot readings that you get overcharged for.
I think there's a generalization when we talk about tarot, because I've stopped saying that I use tarot cards, because immediately I think what it does is it puts this image in people's minds of those places in really rundown towns where it's like the neon flashing sign, psychic, right? And it's just gimmicky and not of something good, and it just kind of has that bad connotation with it.
Well, I mean, the people who there's a huge chunk of practitioners, if you want to call them that, who have turned it into that kind of thing,
Right.
I'm going to charge you $250 right now to read your palm and look at some cards.
Yeah.
And, I have a friend who started doing tarot with a Scrabble deck. I mean, Scrabble, like the Scrabble tiles.
Scrabble tiles, yes.
Yeah, it's yeah. And I like to see that world is kind of moving that direction, kind of breaking away from the dogma. But that's, I think, also kind of like a hallmark of what this generation is doing with all of the institutionalized spiritualism. Like, it's becoming more individualized, which is really cool to see, because I think that's where it shines.
Yes, and I know this is not our topic today, but I feel like I just have to say this. Um, is because you can use that stuff for the bad. Like it still has to be a sacred practice, whether you're using Scrabble tiles or a deck of cards or, legit tarot cards that you get from somewhere. You still have to treat them just as sacred as everything else because you are
Right.
channeling the divine, and that's meant to be honored and practiced in love and light. So use your Scrabble tiles, go for it. I love people who are just, like you said, just sort of reinventing that and making it work for them, but still do it in a very sacred way. That's all I'm gonna say.
That was something like, okay, so going back to what Tony said on the call, which by the way, that was phenomenal. Having him there and all the questions that people asked and everything, and just hearing, he rehashed some of the stuff that he said on our podcast, but then we were able to like build onto it. And man, I took so many great nuggets from that session. And one of the things that he said was anything you do can be from love or fear.
Yes.
It's the same action.
Right.
Like he talked about love, like wearing your seatbelt. It can be out of fear of dying or loving of yourself, right? Like I have kids. I want to live long enough to see them grow up. Or it's, I'm afraid I'm going to die if I don't. Either way, you're still doing the same action, but the motivation, love/fear, really, really, really flavors the whole thing and kind of like, it means something, you know?
Right.
So you can, and I think this is actually a good segue into confidence because then when you do something like break from an institution and start to chart your own course, you have to have confidence in your own true north, your own North Star to take you in a place that is worth being taken. That's like in everyone's highest good. And then when people inside the walls critique you for being outside the walls, confidence is the thing that will kind of help you to keep on charting your course instead of just buckling and be like, okay, you're right, I'm going to start following your rules again. You know? So, man, I don't even know where to start. Like I have a list of things, and they all start with the words "confidence is," but they don't go in any order, right? They're just kind of like word vomit. But what I wanted to do, since I have had, I'm going to draw from my own experience a lot. Hopefully, at least that's the intention I'm going into it with, because I have so many examples from a very recent past to draw upon, from times that I did not sit in confidence, times that I did, times that I was like on fire with it, times that I just buckled at a moment's notice, and I really want to kind of unpack what that looks like and kind of, I don't know, just shed some light on it.
Well, and I think that's a really good point because the reason why we started talking about this is because I mentioned in our last episode, I believe it was, that I believe there's a difference between self-worth and confidence. But confidence can be defined in so many different ways.
Yes.
And I think confidence can be seen as both positive and negative. So I think this is going to be a fun topic to unpack because it could go either way. Some people think confidence is not necessarily a great thing because it looks like arrogance. And then there's a different kind of confidence that I think sounds like you're talking about. So let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me, like the first thing I thought of when you said that was Michael Scott is there's this trope of confident incompetence where you are very confident in you and what you're about and what you're able to do. But that's also matched with like this blaring incompetence to be able to actually function and it's also equipped with like a huge lack of self-awareness, like Michael Scott doesn't realize that he's not competent. And so you're right, confidence, I think it's the same thing. I think people who think of it positively and people who think of it negatively are both looking at the same thing. They just have their own experience of what that's looked like for them because it can go either way. It's like any other tool in a toolbox. It can be used to build a house or destroy one. It doesn't mean that the tool is any different, So first off, defining our terms, the quick... Oh, there's another one I forgot. I'm going to write that down. Hang on. Okay. Actually, I'm going to highlight that one because that one's good. Oh, that one's good. Okay, so when I talk about confidence, what I mean is knowing what you are and what you aren't and being okay with that. Knowing what you are and what you aren't. And just being okay with that. Being okay with both of those things. First off, how does that hit you?
To me, that describes not the confidence that I'm talking about, which is exactly why I wanted to pull this out. That to me is more about the way you value yourself and the self-love and the self-worth piece. Because it's that you love and you trust yourself regardless, and that's how you present yourself very authentically. You stay in your own business, and so you show up with confidence. So that's to me, that's the self-worth side of confidence that I try to encourage. But I see confidence sometimes as way back at the Magic Cup coffee shop. We had a very long conversation that we have yet to share with everyone.
Right.
And in that conversation, we talked about wearing different capes, right? Or costumes, personas.
Yeah,
What was the terminology we used? Something
I
like
probably
that.
use the word masks.
You try on, like you just wear different masks depending on who you need to be and how you need to show up in any given moment. And so I think confidence is really just a mask that a lot of people with confidence don't necessarily have self-worth, don't value themselves. So that's why I feel like confidence is not really the same. There are two types of confidence.
Do you think there's... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and so I just think that I want to just be very clear on the type of confidence that we're talking about and the type of confidence we're coaching people to go after or take a look at. Because it's, I mean, if you're masking, obviously, then you are just stifling something.
Do you think someone can have self-worth and confidence? Is that what you're saying? What you mean when you talk about the positive side of confidence?
Absolutely. Yes. Because then it's not, you're not a putting on of airs. It's just you wholeheartedly love and trust yourself that that's how you show up. To me, that's a confidence. But that isn't dismissive of another person. That isn't a narcissistic view in any way. That is not somehow I'm better than you because I know myself, you don't. Whatever. That is not the confidence. It's just... Well, it's probably part of the whole speaking your truth package, right? Where it's like you have this confidence of showing up authentically, but you're doing it in love and light, where you're still compassionate and empathetic towards the world around you.
Right. Oh, so my imagining for how the format of this episode would go would be me saying one of my confidence is things and then asking you how that lands on you and kind of riffing on it.
Okay.
But aside from those, what you just reminded me is I've actually I came up with a sentence, a phrase that I think perfectly gels everything that both of us have been bringing to the speaking your truth conversation, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. And that one is, well, first of all, do you want to do that, or do you just want to stay on confidence? Because this is kind of on topic, but kind of not.
Go for it. Just throw it out there.
So the sentence is never let someone's potential reaction influence your action, but always let their potential experience influence your action. Not govern or control, but influence. So consider their experience of you, but don't consider how they might react to you. How does that hit you?
I didn't respond to you because I equally agree and disagree with that statement. Because at first I was like, yeah, I like that, right? Because that's what we're saying is like just being aware of the other person's past traumas, old traumas that might resurface based on what you say. So just be mindful of that when you're presenting information. But then I circle back and say, but then you're still sitting in their business. Are you are you still changing how you're showing up? Are you still changing because what you say based on that? And then I'm like, are we just arguing now like semantics? So I don't have a real good answer for you because I go back and forth. On the one hand, I'm like, yes, that's kind of what we're saying. Be aware and mindful of someone's experience in a way that what you are still going to say, it might trigger you. But then the other side of me is like, well, if we're still that caught up in the other person, then are we really authentically saying what we need to say?
Yeah.
And not negatively, like
Yeah.
I'm still operating of love and light.
The love and light is a really important part. And actually, I had something like that this week happen where I was put on the spot with a good friend of mine to just say a thing I knew they were going to be hurt by. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to pause time and go back and listen to the last 9 episodes we've had where we talked about this, or however many episodes, and we're take all the notes and center myself, and and I think I did an okay job of coming at it from a place of love and caring about them and understanding that this was not an easy thing to hear, and feeling like I could trust myself to say it anyway, but to do it in a way that didn't like add insult to injury, And I think I would say I straddled that line pretty effectively, but it took so much work. I had to like pause the show that was on, pause the conversation that was happening, sit there and type a thing and stare at it for 20 minutes and work it and rework it. And it wasn't like a fear of, oh, this is going to make him mad, that's going to make him mad, or I'm going to sugarcoat this. But it was more like, is this authentically speaking my interior in love in a way that is not open for interpretation? Those were my benchmarks, right? And once I knew that it was in love, and it was clear and direct, and it was authentic to me, and it was in love,
yeah.
then I hit send, knowing that it was still that there was gonna be pain, and also holding space to be present and work through that. And man, it was hard. It was so fucking hard.
Right.
And I'm proud of myself for being able to do that, but it just also reminded me how on you have to be. Like if you're not on and you're not present and you're not firing on all cylinders and you're not intentional about being in that space, you're not just going to land in that space on accident.
Right. No.
And that's just, I just want to name that. It's hard. It's doable, but it's hard. But going back to our topic, it took a lot of confidence.
Yes.
To hit
absolutely.
Send and to trust myself.
Yes.
And to go into that without just being a ball of nerves and worry and rumination and what if and putting my defenses up, and all that kind of stuff. Like I had to just decide to be confident in that this was the best thing for me to say in this moment.
So the other part of that too is in saying that, and I don't know what the response or the reaction was of your friend, and that's not necessarily relevant right now, but in a way I feel like by not saying what you needed to say, regardless of if it was going to hurt a little bit, I feel like part of the reason why I think it's so brave when people do that is because I really feel like you are wanting the other person to grow. Like you really love that person a whole lot, and you want them to better themselves, because whatever you're saying is hard, is either setting a boundary for yourself, which hopefully sends a message to them, or it's saying something that you feel about them that maybe they're not aware of that could change their life in some way, and and help them along their journey and help them grow. And so just from my end, kudos to you. It is incredibly hard, but to me that also says you love that friend a whole lot because you're willing to say it out loud.
Yeah, that was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. Well, then, going back to the wanting to grow thing, that's a double-edged sword, because there's another person in my life. I'm being very anonymous and cryptic with these on purpose because I realize I tell a lot of other people's stories on this thing. I don't want people to feel like I can't have an experience with him because he's going to go to the podcast. So I'm like being very, very vague. But who has opened up to me about a struggle that they are having and are in the same place with this precise struggle that they were 3 years ago. Just still circling that same drain. And me loving that person and wanting growth for them, it's very easy for me to choose not to hold space for them to continue to be where they are. Like there was my first response was a bit, oh, we're on this again. We're still on this. Like take one step. Just take one fucking step. And so then. So
do you say that? Not that way, but.
Right. This one, I discerned that in this most recent interaction with them, it was best for me to take a posture of listening.
Okay.
And so I just did. I didn't really speak into it, but it took effort on my part internally to hold space to listen to a thing that's the same thing I've been hearing for years, without getting impatient, without starting to try to just move them forward, because that's just where they want to be. That's where I can either meet them there or I can not. Right. And so it's really weird. It feels counterintuitive. It feels counter authentic for me to hold space for stasis. When what I want for the people I love is growth, you know?
But then what I'm hearing you say, though, is yes, you do want growth for the people you love, but you can't be attached that they're just because you want that for them, that's what's going to happen.
Right. Or I can't really like fall into the trap of deciding that that's what's best for them. It's really easy to decide that growth is what's best for everybody all the time. Yeah. But you know what it's like to try and get someone to move past a spot that they're not ready to move past. You know? And it just doesn't help anything. Anyway.
No, won't go well.
You know? Right. And so that's like my inner conflict is like, I want to see you move forward. You don't want to. Now I have a problem. I'm making a problem for myself that's keeping me from meeting you where you are. Because I want growth for you.
Yes.
And
so I think that you can want growth for another person, but also let go of an expectation if they don't grow.
Right.
I think you can have that balance. It takes practice.
Right.
But I can wish that for you. But if you never meet me there, then if I want to have a relationship with you, then I can't suffer about it.
That's where I have to go.
It's your business. I can just love you.
And that goes back to confidence.
Yeah.
Because I want to be a presence in their life that helps move them forward. Sure. And so then, for me to have a desire to speak into them in a way that would move them forward, in a way, would satisfy my own need to have an event that perpetuates my own story that I want to tell about myself. And that's not really confident. Like, it takes confidence to let someone else be something other than what you want them to be.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Because you're not telling yourself, if I let you stay there and I don't have the influence on you that I want to be able to tell myself I have, what does that mean for me? And then you're shaping your identity around their story, which is not confidence. But if you are confident in your own thing and who you are and what you bring to it, you can bring you to the thing. And regardless of how that lands on them, it doesn't tell you. That's not a thermometer for you for how well you're doing. You know?
Yeah, confidence is definitely, in that case, it is not. Well, confidence is in the way that I'll put it that way, in the way that we're describing it is, really realizing that you have no influence over the other person. And that's okay.
Yeah. And then if you find yourself acting out of a need to assert that you do, then you're dependent. Well, that goes back to where is it? Confidence is not having anything to prove.
Not having anything to prove. Well, yeah, because if you have something to prove, you are using everybody else's measuring stick. If you have something to prove and you're working towards proving something, you're proving something that is outside of you, that is not your own. You don't have to prove a damn thing because you have all the worth just to be here and be a bump on a log. Right? And if we go back to the conversation of you saying that everything has soul, so if a rock and a tree and a flower and a frog and a person, if we all have soul, then that means, like in the universe's eyes, we are all equal. We are all equal. So having confidence, if you feel like confidence is having something to prove, then that's the negative confidence we're talking about, where I feel like that's just a mask. You're just trying to be somebody and then tell everybody, make sure everybody knows that you are what they want you to be.
Yeah. And this is why I think people are really quick to, myself included, are really quick to compare confidence and arrogance. Because I think arrogance, I may have used this analogy for something else on the podcast before, but when I couldn't swim until I was 13. I just never learned. I had people try to teach me, it just never stuck. And my next door neighbors growing up had a pool, and so she would be like, oh, you just tread water like this. And she would go out into the deep end and she would just tread water. But she didn't really know all of the physics that were going on. She just knew that she always knew how to swim and this is how you do it. And so I would go out there and I would do with my body what I saw her doing with her body. I would take the external expression of what it looked like for her to do it. And I would tell my body, just do a thing that looks like that. And I sunk. I could not tread water. Because she didn't tell me the motivation behind the movements or how the water works. She just said, do this. And then I did this. And that's what I think arrogance is. I think arrogance is when you see confidence, you see the external expression of what confidence is. And without having the thing behind it, you try to wear that like a pair, like clothes. You try to exude and demonstrate and behave the way you see truly confident people behaving. to convince everybody that you have confidence too. But really, you and everybody else knows that it is a cover-up for what you know is a lack of real confidence. Which is why arrogance is so big and loud, and hey, look at me, and and that goes back to one of the other things I wrote was confidence is saying I can't do that.
Confidence is saying I can't do that?
Yes, and here's why. I worked a job as a creative where I was one of the resident rock stars, and everybody thought I could do anything. Creatively, visually, multimedia wise. There wasn't anything that I couldn't do and knock out of the park. And you would think confidence would then be owning that and being like, yeah, I can totally do this thing you're asking. But when you're in a meeting and you're faced with somebody who asks you to do something that is really outside of your capacity, that's way outside your wheelhouse and above your pay grade, if you're not confident, you're going to say, oh, I can totally do that. And you're going to just tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to figure out how to do it. Or I'm going to trick you know how many times I have made my work look better than it is? I know how to make my work actually look like I'm more skilled than I actually am by cheating and whatever, right? And if you're not confident, you're going to tell people, I can do this. I can totally do this. If you are, you have nothing to prove. And so you can, if you're called upon to do something that is outside of your capability, confidence is the ability to say, hey, that's outside my capability. And not think any less of yourself. And not think it doesn't feel like a loss. And you're not worried about how people might now view you because you said, I can't do a thing. And so I want to go. I want you to riff on that.
You took comparison out of it. That's where we spend a lot of our time. Yes. And compare and despair is what they call it. Kind of
right.
The kitschy phrase, compare and despair. And so, when you have that confidence, well, and you go back to Brene Brown talking about bullshitting, that's the opposite. When you say that you can't do something, you just bullshit and say, oh yeah, sure, I can do it. And then you try to figure it out.
And that's arrogance in my book.
Yeah, that is definitely not confidence. So, right. That's also incredibly, yeah, but it's very hard to do. That is very hard to do. I think that confidence is also the ability to say no. I remember way back before we started this podcast and we were voxing a lot more, and I was voxing you on my drives to and from driving my son at school, and I'm a visual person. That has nothing to do with the story. I'm not even, I'm just
you're setting the stage.
Why the hell I said that? It's because I can see myself in my car and exactly where I was when I heard you say this and what I thought. So, and I was thinking about at that time, doing a big virtual master class, and I needed obviously somebody to produce and record all that stuff. And you were the only person in my world that had that capability. And so I asked if you were interested or if you knew anybody that might, because I was fine if you said no, but you're the only person. So I figured you'd shoot me off to somebody else. And you came back with this whole explanation about how it was probably a 15-minute long box about how you wanted to, you were really working on setting your boundaries and putting yourself first, and that you just got you found yourself just saying yes all the time, kind of like this, you're just saying, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And you're loading up your schedule and you're overwhelming yourself. And so you were going through this phase of just telling everybody no on everything.
Yep.
And so you're telling me this story, all that to say no, I'm not going to do this for you, but I have a name, right? And then go from there. And so I think that is confidence as well, because it's really hard to tell somebody no, and especially when it's an ask from somebody that you care about and you want to help them and you want to see them grow and you want to see them thrive, and you might have skills or talents to help them do that, but it doesn't work for you. And you know that, and it would be breaking one of your own personal boundaries for self-care. It's really hard to say no. Yeah. And so having the confidence to know what my experience might be, that I might be disappointed or upset or frustrated or however I might react, you still put yourself first, which still ultimately helped me, because if you went into it not wanting to do it and you just did it because of our relationship, it wouldn't have gone very well. It wouldn't have been a great production, right? So you saying no might have quote unquote irritated me, which it didn't and wouldn't. But if that would have been my reaction, it still would have, even though I wouldn't have seen it, helped me along my journey, because then I would have found somebody who was more committed or, excited about the project. Thing. Yeah.
Right. That was so hard to do.
Yeah. Because you were telling like everybody no, right? Like
I
on
was.
Everything.
Well, that's how I am. I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person. And there are a couple places where I still get shit for that. Like there are still some people that I said no to during that chapter. No? who are like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to ask you to do this because I don't want to hear you say no again. But or just won't let me live down the one thing they asked during that time that I said no to and never went back to. But it was interesting how like every reason why that was hard for me was in here. Mm-hmm. There was not one single person I said no to that gave me a negative reaction, or like unfriended me, or was really angry,
Right.
And so I had to go through enough of those, and I was like, my prefrontal cortex knew that.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna say no to a bunch of people, and they're all still gonna be there, and it's gonna be fine.
They'll still
and
be
you're
friends.
gonna you're gonna be redefining the dynamic into something that works better for everybody. And when you get there, you'll see that was always how this is going to play out. Mm-hmm. But then my fucking hippocampus was like, everyone's gonna hate you, and that's what made it hard. I had to go through a process of people proving to me that they didn't hate me, and I needed that to get there. But I got there, and I'm glad. But then that also brings me to another thing, like over-explaining. Mm-hmm. When you have to set a boundary, I don't want to say this the wrong way. That is a form of lack of confidence, but it's also a necessary step. Like anytime I've seen somebody go from having no boundaries to having boundaries, when they start drawing them, you over-explain so much. You're almost apologetic about having to set this boundary, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's new and you're still trying to like
you don't
ease
have the
people
confidence
into it.
yet.
Yes. So it is a lack of confidence, but it's not a bad thing. I don't want to paint lack of confidence as a bad thing. That's just is a marker of where you are on your growth journey.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2 nights ago, someone was asking me to do something. It was just really innocuous. It wasn't even a big deal, but it just didn't align with my interior. And they asked me that question over text, and I said, nope. And that was it.
And that's it.
There wasn't even an explanation. It wasn't like, here's why, or here's because, or whatever. And that's one thing that that's the next step of growing in even more confidence, is being able to set a boundary without feeling the need to explain it, excuse it, give reasons, apologize, disclaim it. None of that. That's all still you trying to smooth over a problem that may not actually exist. You tell yourself it will, but it won't. And then that plays into something that I've just now recently learned that I do a lot, and that I'm actually starting to stop doing, which is a really weird way to say that. But confidence is not needing to recruit others to validate your interiors.
Oh, that's a big one. Because that plays into
guilty of that so much. Yes, the answer is yes.
That is one of those. Okay, well, this is interesting. I'm glad you brought this up, because this is one of those pieces as a friend that I've been trying to figure out how to explain to you.
That I do.
That you do.
Yeah.
Because I see it as, I feel like you are not trusting yourself.
That's exactly what it is.
And I want you to trust yourself. And so I see you out there like sort of waiting for everybody else's critique or criticism or opinion or comment on it before you kind of decide where you're going to fit. Mm-hmm. And, but that's a hard thing to say to you.
Sure.
Because I mean, it could come across as, you just want everybody to tell you how good you did, or like there's so many ways it could be interpreted. I like your word, interpretation. It could be interpreted wrong in your mind. And so I've been spending a few moments like really trying to process, like, how can I say this and be authentic to myself, but also feel like as your friend, you hear what I'm saying. Not that you'll do anything with it. That's not what I mean by hear me, but because I'm not expecting you to change.
I won't hear what you're not saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting you to change. You may still do that, but I just want you to be aware that that's how I feel, and just see how that lands on you. Right. So. Yeah.
And as someone who really highly values feedback, that it'll pierce. Like I purposely don't have a lot of armor against that type of stuff, which could make it harder to say stuff to me, because then it's easier for it to hurt.
It is, but you are one of my most open friends. Meaning,
thank you.
if I feel like you have a blind spot about something, and that's just my opinion. Like, that's my experience looking back from here. But I always feel like I can say that to you because you have come back to me before and said, no, it's not like that. It's like this. And I'm like, oh, right, sure, I can see that. I didn't have all the full context or anything. So, but other times you're like, whoa, I didn't see that. You're right. And it's like, that's the open piece. You don't immediately get defensive with me. At least all the time, I don't think.
That's good to hear. I think when I do get immediately defensive, there's the at you part is missing. I get defensive and then I deal with it myself before I do anything.
Yeah, because your defensiveness doesn't come back at me. Yes.
I mean, if it does, it's really sneaky because sometimes me filling in the context and giving you information you didn't know, sometimes that can be defensive.
True.
Which goes back to confidence is not needing to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, if I were more confident in that situation, even if I knew you were only looking at certain pieces of the puzzle, I could then say, oh, well, if I was only seeing those pieces of the puzzle, I would draw that conclusion too. And
absolutely.
Knowing in my heart that that's what you see, it doesn't do anyone any good for me to say, oh, here are the rest of the puzzles. Now they'll take a step back and look at the whole picture and have a different opinion on me. That's fucked up. It's just like, hey, okay, this is what you're looking at. I totally see how you see that. And then what I could do is just say, why is that the only part of me that she sees? Why am I only showing her,
Yeah, sure.
But then the other thing is, I don't want to skirt this and let myself off the hook. I do recruit other people to validate my interiors. Not just in the form of feedback like, how did I do? Like, I made a thing. What do you think? My opinion of this thing is going to be based on what everyone else's opinion of it is. Like, that's kind of like what an artist does. That's what a performer does. You go out there and you give a good show on a stage and they don't clap because they've all had a bad day. You're going to think you gave a bad performance regardless of how you did, right? And that's just how performing arts work. That's how the arts work.
Yeah.
And there's no getting around that and there's no changing it. But it's also, in addition, it's worth moving to a place where you know what quality work is and you can identify it whether it came from you or not. Where if you did something that's good quality work, you could just know what it is because you know what quality work is. And regardless of how people respond, you know how good it is. And if it sucks, you also know that it sucks. Going back to confidence is saying, I can't do this. Right?
Well, you're
that's
trusting
also part
yourself.
Of it.
You're just trusting your own knowing.
Right, and you're
Whether
taking
or
your
not
own
you did your
insecurities
best,
out
or
of the
it could have been better.
equation. Right, so when I get good feedback on something, I'm like, thanks. If I get negative feedback on something, I evaluate and say, are they right or are they wrong? And sometimes they're wrong, and I don't even need to feel the need to go back to them and tell them they are wrong. That's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
But the one place that I am working right now is if I'm trying to make a point, I have a way of recruiting people who agree with me to help make the point.
Yeah. Okay.
That is lack of confidence because I'm not when I have to say this person agrees with me. I got this feedback that said the same thing. This whole group of people are in my camp, right? When I do that, what I'm really saying is I don't trust myself enough to just say the thing. Right? And that's what I did a lot in our 4-part episode. I mean, there was feedback, and I think that it was worth. Sometimes it's worth noting that there's a consensus, and it's not just you.
Sure.
But
yeah,
again, going back to what Tony said, if me recruiting consensus is coming from me not trusting myself, then that's not the best situation. That's not the reason I recruit consensus. I'll recruit people who agree with me if I really am convinced that I'm right and I'm trying to get through to somebody and they're just digging in their heels. That's when I'll go in and be like, okay, well, if it matters,
like an intervention.
Yes, like if you're on a path where you or someone else could get hurt. Or whatever, and I'm really trying to do what I can within my power to steer you a little bit. That's when I'm like, hey, I'm not the only person who sees this.
Yes.
But then that requires some groundwork because I don't want to speak for somebody else. So then you have to go. It's kind of like when we were filmmakers and we had to go get people to sign off the little release forms for me to show their face in the background. Like I have to go to every single person, like, can I use your words here just to kind of like help make the point? But then that's I think an okay time to recruit consensus. But if it's coming from, if I just say this is how I feel, they're just going to shoot it down and it's not enough and maybe I'm wrong. So they're not going to believe me if I don't say everybody agrees with me. Well, then that's you ruminating and baseless projection and being in their business. Trust yourself. If that's how you feel, if that's what you see, then say that.
Well, and it goes back
that's
to
hard for me.
if you're recruiting people, that's very much, that feels like an attack. Like you are trying to, not you, just in general, like if someone is recruiting people to help get their point across, then you're trying to get the person that you're attacking to get on your side, and expecting them to hear what you have to say, listen to it, and then all of a sudden follow you.
Right.
And that also to me is not confidence, because I want everybody to trust themselves. We were all gifted with this inner knowing. And so this is where I fall with all of the polarization that's happening right now. I fall right there in the middle. I want you to trust yourself. I want you to do what's best for you. I don't want to convince you to do what I'm doing, because that might not be what's good for you. But I want to have the choice for you to do what you want to do and for me to do what I want to do, knowing that we both have the same intention,
Right.
And so there was something else I was going to say. I feel like really what we're circling the drain on is you're talking about an internal locus of control versus that external. And really what that means is just a psychological term, but it simply means that you are just driven, your behaviors, your actions, your thoughts are driven from the inside. They're driven from your own measuring stick. They're driven from your own trust, your own essential self, your true north self, and not validated and driven from anything outside of you. And the minute that you make that shift towards that internal, that's when you have that confidence that we're talking about.
Right.
And it's a hard shift to make. I mean, most people go to therapy for this reason, is trying to shift back to an internal locus of control.
The phrase I keep saying is bring it home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The COVID thing has been really tough for me because I am a big fan of not telling people how to live their lives. I came from Christian world where that's what the evangelical movement was going to strangers and telling them to live their life by your rules. And I find myself in a different place with that because my actions affect everybody and your actions affect everybody. And for me to make a decision with my life is necessarily for me to make a decision with yours. And you can't see if someone's immunocompromised. That doesn't look like anything. And so it's like when you're a tattoo artist, you're trained to assume that everybody has AIDS because of the transmission and how easily it could be transmitted if you're not 100% careful. So you're changing your gloves, you're sanitizing, you're sterilizing, you're, all that stuff, taking all those measures. You're not asking people if they have a communicable disease. You're assuming they are because that's what makes it safer for everyone who comes in your office. And I feel like that's where my mindset has been. Like, I want you to make the decision that's in everyone's highest good. And if I believe that your heart is there, then that's all I need to know. But I've also seen people on both camps who are not motivated or don't appear to be motivated to act in everyone's good. And that's scary to me because then another person might make a decision that affects my kid or me or someone that I come in contact with without even knowing that it went through me.
Right. But then what you're saying then is that what I hear you say is that you're trying to control then what everybody else does. Because all you can control at the end of the day is how you keep your kids safe, how you keep your family safe, how you keep you safe. How the other person shows up is totally out of your control, regardless if some institution comes along and puts mandates and laws and rules in place. But I think this is the struggle I had with one of the points that you made about this whole situation is everything you do affects everybody else. Yes, it does, but not just in COVID. And that's, I feel, the point that we're missing.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's everything we do, everything we say, every action that we take, every side that we're on does affect somebody else. And I understand why there's like more of an impact when we're talking about the coronavirus, because that's in some cases life or death. But it's still like, why are we just approaching this with that mindset and not everything?
Oh, I think we should.
Not everything we do. Right. Yes. And I know that's not what you're arguing, but I'm just saying I get frustrated when
people
that's
keep
sort of the attitude
it all matters
just about
in the COVID box.
Just in the COVID box. And I'm like, no, everything you do matters.
And it always has. I hope that mindset shift sticks around. I hope that it becomes a thing. Like when Abbott lifted the mask mandate in Texas and everybody got even more polarized about it. And one of the things that he said in the release was, I want everyone to have the freedom to make their own decision with their own fate. And my one comment was like, your decision is for all of our fates. Like, everyone's fate is in everyone else's hands all the time. But you're right. That's not a consequence of COVID. That's what it means to be human. That's how it's always been. And that's how it will be after this thing blows over. That is a fact of what it means to coexist, is my decisions affect all of you.
Right.
So and I hope that people like continue to act that way after there isn't a life-threatening pandemic at stake.
And yes, but I have another thought about this, because what are your thoughts then? Because I believe that you and I have very polar opposite opinions on what we believe. Like, you're saying you feel like what you do affects everybody else. I feel like what you say you're doing doesn't work. I believe that what you're saying you're doing truly doesn't work. And so what do you do in that situation where that's my true belief and that's your true belief, and they come and they butt heads? And I feel like I'm not, because I feel like when I'm saying that I want choice, that I'm not, I feel like people are hearing me say that I just don't give a shit about what you believe, what you, meaning the person on the other side, believes. And that's not the case. I don't want to bump up against that when I say that I want choice, but that's what happens. It's really hard for me to kind of verbalize that and be authentic about it and say that I want choice, because I feel like people hear me say that I just don't really care about the health and safety of other people. I do care about the health and safety of other people. I just feel that this doesn't work.
Right. And hopefully people hear that too, that you are using the information that you're looking at to make the best decision for everybody involved, everybody you touch, right? And that's where like the intent versus impact thing gets so sticky, right? Mm-hmm. I recently apologized for something that I didn't mean to do, and I had the choice to either say, "Hey, it wasn't my intention, so your hurt is your problem," or say, "Hey, the impact was still there, and I need to own that part." And I at least think it's 50-50 intent versus impact. And that's the thing. That's the thing that makes COVID hard for me, is that even if your intentions are good and you're still doing something that harms somebody, there's a better option. And I think, well, let me put it this way to answer your actual question. When there are studies where someone has a mask and they sneeze into a petri dish, and then they don't have a mask and they sneeze into a petri dish, the petri dish without the mask grows a bacteria culture. Everyone expects that. The petri dish that they sneeze into with the mask grows significantly less bacteria, but not zero. Now, when people look at those studies, one camp says, "See, this is proof that they work." Another camp says, "See, this is proof that they don't." It's the same study. It's the same information. But the "it doesn't work" people are saying it doesn't make it zero, so it doesn't work. Stuff still gets out. And the "it works" people are saying, see how much this reduces the odds of transmission. So when it comes down to a difference of opinion, what I like to do is compare notes and say, let me show you all the information I'm looking at. What's all the information you're looking at? And how are we interpreting that? Because then it takes our opinions off the table. It takes intentions off the table. I'm not questioning your intention. You're not questioning mine. What we're both assuming is that both of us are coming at it, looking at information and making the best decision we can based on information. And if we have a discrepancy of opinion, then we must have a discrepancy of information. Not saying that mine is valid and yours isn't. That means that you're probably looking at stuff that I'm not looking at, and I'm probably looking at stuff that you're not looking at. But it could also be true that we're looking at the same stuff and still drawing different conclusions. Which then, I mean, I like you said, I don't want to try to control what anybody else does. I don't. But when people go around still at this point thinking the mask is for the protection of the wearer, I do feel the need to inform them that that's never what they were about. And when people think that their actions literally don't affect other people, at least in when it's life or death, I do feel obligated to inform them that it really does. Because then if you can take that information and still decide to do what you want to do, that's out of my hands. And my only decision is I can just stay the fuck away from you until everyone's vaccinated. Which that's all I can do. But to answer your question, I like to bring it back to what information are we looking at and what are we doing with that information? Mm-hmm. I think that's the only way I can think of to have a productive COVID conversation with someone with whom I'm on the other side of a fence. Mm-hmm. Which we haven't actually done yet. I haven't asked or sent any.
And I'm just going to say, I respectfully disagree with everything that you just said, but I don't want to get into that conversation.
Right.
Here.
Because this is about confidence.
I want to get back to confidence. Yes.
Right.
So I'm confidently telling you that I have some strong beliefs that don't match your beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's worth a conversation in another place.
Yes, but I do want to know what they are, though, and I want to hear those from you, but we can do that over Voxer. Yeah. And then if we decide it's an episode, we can go from there.
That works.
So another one is confidence is apologizing without self-loathing. And this comes down to how often have you given or heard the apology where on top of ownership of what I did wrong, I then take it to the extreme of I can't do anything right. Or I'm such an idiot. Or I just fail all over the place. Or some kind of commentary that's just self-deprecating. It goes beyond the apology. It goes beyond ownership. And now you're just voicing negative self-talk. Mm-hmm. It's to be able to own that I messed up. And own how I messed up. And the impact that had. And then cut it off there and don't go into, I'm such a terrible person. That's confidence. Because what I find is, at least when I do that, and when people that I know well, and I've seen people kind of venture into that territory, it starts to feel like I'm now prompting you to build up my ego. Like, oh, I messed up. I always mess up. I'm such a failure. Pause. Right. Now come in and make me feel better. It went from me addressing your experience and your feelings to then putting you on the spot to make me feel better about the fact that I need to make you feel better, right? And it's this really weird ninja move that if people aren't careful, they get sucked right into. Like, oh, no, you're fine. It's just a little, and then I'm comforting you when you start off apologizing. And so what that is I'm relying on you for my own sense of self-worth. I'm relying on you to make me feel better because I don't have it within myself to just realize that I'm human and we all mess up and that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I can't tell myself that. I need you to tell me that for me. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to own when you've messed up and apologize without immediately going into self-loathing and negative self-talk and self-deprecation, to me that feels like confidence. Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I think if you have this kind of confidence, what you are saying is that you are owning your mistake. And going back to failure being the acronym for first attempt in learning, like we're all on a growth pattern. We are not perfect. We are meant to make mistakes and fall every now and again and get back up. And confidence is owning that you fell, you messed up, you might have failed in that situation, but it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't define where you're going. It's just something that happened, and your apology is owning that, and the confidence is you're just going to keep moving and growing and take away from the experience to hopefully not do it again. But I think there's something to the other side of this that also speaks to confidence. And so I have a friend that was going through a really just bad divorce, and I have been known, you can attest to this, that I'm real flaky when it comes to like texts and phone calls. I just don't like my phone. And so if you're a friend that literally doesn't live near me in my space, I own this, that I'm just not a person that keeps up with that very well unless you need me, right? And so she's going through this, and I just sort of, I knew that, and I had compassion for her, and I spent a lot of time with her. But when she really needed me, I was just sort of off the radar, right? Just didn't show up in the way that I really, now looking back, wanted to show up for her to kind of help her through this process. And so months later, we're out to lunch, and we're sitting there, and she goes, I just want to tell you, you really hurt me. And when I needed you, I just felt like you were unavailable, and you just weren't there. And I just kind of felt like you were the one person that sort of knew all the ins and outs of this and really just let me talk. And so I was like, you're so right. You are so right. And I knew that's not the person I want to be. And I knew that she was right. I felt it. And there was no way that I was going to, I had two options there: to scramble and be like, well, yeah, you're right, but I had a lot of stuff going on, or do what you're talking about. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so horrible. I'm an awful person. You had this horrible thing. And then I did this to you, and on top of all of it. And I just owned it. And I said, that was a very shitty thing to do. And it's not the friend I want to be. And I'm sorry. And I'm glad that you're giving me another chance to be your friend. And this is what she says. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's fine. She dismissed my apology. Right? And this is what I hear all the time. Like, someone says, I'm sorry. And we just say, oh, it's okay. Like, you want the apology, but then you don't really know how to accept it. And I said, no. I almost said her name. I said, no. I go, it is not okay. It is not okay that I treated you that way. And so please tell me, thank you for that. Please tell me I feel better now. Now we can move on. Own my apology. Don't dismiss it, because I did do a wrong to you, and I'm owning that wrong, and I want to make it better because I don't want to be that friend to you. So have confidence, right, in yourself, in what you trust, in your own value, that you're worthy of being apologized to.
Yes. That's so tricky. Like, it's so easy. It is so easy to slip out of confidence.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Or just to like forget that it's an option. And
yeah.
Because when I feel like I'm about to make someone uncomfortable, or like I'm going to inconvenience somebody or cause any type of like emotional turmoil, my first response is to just become a doormat. Just become very agreeable and very like, I will say yes to things I just don't agree with. I will let people say things that I'm like, on my insides, I'm like, I disagree, but don't make waves. And so I'm like, yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, I'm right on the same page with you. And that's just like, I can feel confidence just exiting out the back door. Like, okay,
right.
Bye. And you have to like reel it back in and say, no, I need you right now. And it's not going to be fun, but we'll get through it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like I said at the beginning, you have to do that on purpose. That does not happen on accident.
No.
It doesn't. And in that situation, I heard that you didn't defend yourself, which is confidence. You didn't need to explain yourself, which is confidence. You didn't need to make her also a problem. That's confidence. You gave a very sincere apology without going into self-loathing territory. That's confidence.
But then I also gave her the opportunity to practice confidence and just accept my apology. Just a shift in from saying it's okay to thank you.
Right.
Now, I deserved that apology. Thank you.
Do you think that would you count it growth in that instance to have moved to a place where you were even okay with her even okay with her dismissing it?
I was okay with that because I can't control, whether she learned, I don't want to say whether she learned that lesson or not. I just hope that she heard me say to her in what I was saying is that she is worthy of someone apologizing to her. She's worthy of owning that she's hurt. She's worthy of owning that she wasn't treated right. That she deserves to be treated better.
As a lack of self-worth.
As a lack of self-worth. Yeah. Right. Like her saying, oh, it's okay. It's just like her saying, yeah, it's okay to shit all over me. Don't worry about it. You can do it again.
Right.
That's what I feel people are saying when they just say, it's okay. It's like them saying, I just needed you to say that, but it's still okay for you to show up and abuse me next time.
Right. It's okay for you to not let me hurt you again. And so when you pushed, and it's like, no, accept my apology. That was coming from a place of you're worth it. Like you're picking her back up and building worth into her, and that was kind of
I'm wanting her to see her worth. Like,
right.
I want you to own that you are worth me apologizing to you, and know that it's not acceptable for me to do that again.
Right.
Yeah.
I just projected because there have been times that someone hasn't accepted an apology that I gave, and I pushed them to accept it. But for me, in those moments, it came from I was still hanging my worth on whether or not they accepted it.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't count, and it's not a real apology. I didn't do good enough, and this isn't going to be a closed loop for me until you tell me you accept my apology. Don't dismiss it because I need, and then those two phrases, I need.
Yeah.
If I'm giving an apology and there's something I need from you in the middle of the apology, it's not an apology. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So that's where that question came from. Because if I had said no, I want you to accept it, that would have just been me coming from a place of needing something from you to validate something in me.
Right. No, me saying that to her was the coachiness in me coming out saying, see your own worth.
Yes.
Right.
Which is huge.
So to wrap this all up, one thing that I want to say.
Oh man, I have one more. I know,
okay.
we're
what
close to it. But this one's, I don't know why I saved the best for last. Confidence is a prerequisite to humility. And this came from a little bit of a toxic masculinity angle here. But one of the things I wrote was confidence is the ability to lose a competition without feeling like you've lost something.
Oh, yeah.
Because oftentimes you lose and you feel the need to, I'll get you next time, or I need to recover, or next time I need to prove, or something, And so to be able to lose, quote unquote, lose to somebody without feeling like you've actually lost anything. Because you're oh, I did what I could and that was it. That's just how it panned out and they were better. Or admitting that someone else is better than you at something. And especially when they're gloating in your face about it. Confidence is the ability to just be okay with that. Yeah, I lost. You were better at it. That's cool.
This is interesting. I have a problem with the word humble. I have a problem with humility.
Really?
Humility?
It is now humility.
Humility.
Regardless of what it was before, it is now humility.
Thank you, homeschooler.
I was not in the school system, so I have the unique ability to create words, and that is now on the dictionary.
Come out of my mouth.
Humility. Yeah. There's so many directions we can take.
Wow.
You have a problem with humility.
That? I do.
But it's so
I
charming.
do. So I want to. That's a perfect jumping off point for another.
For the next one.
For another segment.
Okay, so you make a list of things that
because
say humility is.
I don't think confidence. No. You're not gonna like it when I say this. I don't think people should be humble.
I love so much that we're doing this.
Do not take that at face value. Don't tell a story about that. Stay tuned, and
we will
talk
unpack
about it.
that and make it into a whole thing. That was a teaser, everybody.
Okay, so to wrap this up, there's something I really want to say about confidence. And it's that the confidence that we're talking about, I want to be very clear and say that most people don't have it. So
right.
If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have confidence, that doesn't make you bad. There is nothing wrong with you. That's the practice that we're talking about in life. We are practicing to get that kind of confidence, and not that there's an end goal and all of a sudden we're going to show up and have confidence. It's a process. It's a continual process. You may have confidence that we're talking about in some areas of your life and you may not in others. It's just this continual awareness and this continual growth process when we're talking about this kind of confidence. So I'm saying this because I don't want anyone to kind of start telling themselves a story that they don't have confidence, or even to challenge them to look like, well, I have confidence. Challenge them and ask if it's this type of confidence, positive confidence that we're talking about, that's backed up with self-love, but it's still compassionate and it's still empathetic to other people, or is it more of the shell confidence where it's just a mask that you're putting on to live up to somebody else's measuring stick, So, because you'd mentioned sometime in here that not everybody has this confidence, and I want to validate that.
Right.
That's true, but it doesn't make that's the work. The work is working on that. The work is practicing that confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay to, a good way to practice beginning to have confidence is just owning how much you have or don't have, and then just being okay with that being where you are. Mm-hmm. That in itself is an act of confidence.
Absolutely.
Because you can even own, I just don't have a lot of confidence here.
Right.
That right there is a confident move.
Confidence.
Because you're already surrendering your need to cover up and fill in that space and posture and all that stuff. You're just owning. That's what it is. It's owning what you are. It's owning what you are, which is also owning what you're not, which is bringing it home. If you need any other source of external validation for for anything that you do or any opinion you have of yourself, then that is a place where you could stand to build more confidence. It's not a bad thing that you don't. Mm-hmm. But if you want confidence, if you want to build those, look to those places first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or last. I don't know. Whatever. Do your thing.
You do you.
You do you. That's confidence.
Yes.
What are you grateful for?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to throw this out there, and it's going to push some buttons. But it's my experience, and I am grateful for it.
Okay.
I am grateful Governor Abbott lifted the mask ordinance and opened all businesses in the state of Texas not because I don't care about the people. I am grateful that he has given the choice back to people and businesses to make mindful and informed decisions.
I love that you said that anyway. I tell myself a story. I make up a story that your brain is filling you with all kinds of reasons not to have said that.
Oh, of course it is.
And then you did.
I'm sweating over here. You just can't see it.
Well, you are in a sweater and a scarf.
Well, I was cold until this moment. I'm like, ah!
Everybody, Abby just demonstrated confidence. Because that I feel like that was in alignment with your interiors.
Yes. Yes.
I am grateful. This is going to sound silly. And this is me disclaiming it because I guess I don't have confidence that people are going to meet me where I am. Today is the release date of a 4-hour director's cut of the Justice League movie.
Okay.
And I did not like the Justice League movie. There's so many things I do not like about that whole cinematic endeavor. And that could be a whole nother conversation for a whole different podcast even. I have some strong opinions.
Okay.
But it's got Batman. I can't not watch a Batman thing. And there's all kinds of things that went into why this exists and what it is and what it's supposed to be. Uh-huh. And I'm trying to hold space for myself to be excited about it, even though I don't really expect to like it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to watch it. And I love the fact that the time has finally come that I can actually sit down for 4 hours in front of a movie and just, even if it's hate watching, I just like... I'm just excited to just get to watch the damn thing. It's like a conclusion to a huge story that's been happening in Hollywood and so just like it's coming to a huge conclusion, and I'm very excited that today is the day that I can just kind of get it out of my system and see what it's all about, and maybe it'll end up being okay.
You are pleasantly surprised by what you see.
It would be definitely a surprise, but it would be a pleasant one. I'm open to it. I really am. I'm open to it. Here's the thing. I want it to be something that I like.
Well, I don't expect it to. If you're willing to spend 4 hours on it, there's some level in there where that, like, it's not all that bad.
I've even arranged for like my wife to do bedtime, and right when he goes away, I'm gonna turn it on. I've been trying to figure out where I have a 4-hour block of time to watch this movie unbroken, and I'm trying to give it all the chances.
Okay.
And we'll see.
All right.
But I woke up this morning. Here's the deal. It dropped at 4 a.m. this morning. And I don't know when I learned that. But at some point in my past, I learned that on this day at 4 a.m. it was going to show up on HBO Max. And I know that because at that point in time, I set an alarm to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the damn movie.
Okay.
And I forgot about it. This morning I wake up and the alarm goes off. I'm like, why in the fuck do I have a 4 a.m. alarm? And then I realized, Justice League, cool, going back to sleep. But at some point I was really excited about it. So anyway, It's just, I'm more excited about this than I want to admit to myself because, again, I don't really like Zack Snyder's work. And I don't know. I'm really conflicted about liking this so much. Anyway, I'm grateful for it. I have a lot of gratitude for whatever it's worth. It's there, and I'm naming it.
Okay. All right.
Until next time, everybody, when we talk about why Abby hates humility.
Oh, no. Don't interpret it that way.
I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Oh, my gosh.
A joke. We're gonna. Until next time, I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye.
Oh, man.
We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. And you can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect. That was
What about
perfect.
the gratitude?
Oh, this one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.